Welcome, brilliant minds. Today's lesson is for October 23rd, and you should already have your textbook open up to page 396. You should also have your classwork 5 note set up for your do now already. If you do not have this already set up, go ahead and press pause right now and set up your notes for your do now. Okay, by now you should have set up your do now, and you see that we're doing a circle map about cities. So we see that one city on our map is called Medina, and we're gonna go up to our map, and we can see that cities on this map are shown on most maps like a dot with the name next to it. So Medina is right here, and I already found another one, Mecca, and go ahead and add that to my circle map. And now you guys can go ahead and add 3 more cities to your circle map. So go ahead and pause the video now to go ahead and add those 3. Okay, by now you should have 5. And let's go ahead and see if you got the other 3 correct. So you could also have put Cairo. And if you got that correct, you can put a check next to it. You should also have Jerusalem, maybe. You could also have added in Baghdad. Got either of those, could put a check. And the other city you could have put in could maybe have been Damascus. Okay, so another couple of options you could have put. Right now we're going to take a look at the questions on our map, and there were 3 questions, actually there's 4 questions, but we're only going to answer 3, and we can take a look at what they are on page 296. The first question says, look at the map. Is Arabia east or west of India? So let's go ahead and find Arabia. It's this large peninsula here. This is Arabia. And we also need to find India. And I see India is right here. And I want to know, is this east or west of India? Well, let's see. Do I need to find my compass on this map? That might help me. Or can I remember it on my own? I see that I do see a compass right here. And it's saying north, east, and west. So Arabia is on this side of India, so that means that it is north, east, south, west of India. So we can go ahead and add here for number 1. Arabia is west of India. Question 2 asks, how did Arabia's location make it a trading crossroads between the east and the west? Well, maybe this has got a clue from my last answer. We can say it's west of India, perhaps and east of Africa, where they're able to trade between Africa and India. Okay, so Arabia allowed for trade between India and Africa. Let's take a look at question 3. Question 3 says, describe all the boundaries of Arabia. Okay, so we're talking a lot about Arabian geography here. Well, we see that one of the boundaries is the Red Sea. Up here it's the Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, and the Arabian Sea. So I can put all of these different seas as boundaries. So we see red, Mediterranean, black, Caspian, and Arabian Seas are the borders of Arabia. So it's surrounded by seas. Okay, so now we've continued this map work from last week, and we also want to be thinking about what our bigger question is that it's leading us to. So we know that we're studying this map that's about Islamic civilization. And we've been talking about a couple of different religions that have been similar to Islam. We talked about Judaism and Christianity, and today we're going to be thinking about a new faith, and we're thinking about Islamic civilization. So let's go back to that big question we had for this unit. And the big question was, how does religion change society? So how do religions like Judaism and Christianity and Islam, how do they change who people are? Okay? And our goal for today, we've already talked about Judaism and Christianity, and we've talked a lot about maps, and today we're going to kind of draw the connections between maps and people. So we're going to say, we will determine 2 ways that geography changed how people lived in Arabia by writing in complete sentences. Okay. So now that we have our goal for the day, we want to think about how can we use our text to help us. So we're going to go up here and we see that this is all about Arab life, right? And the guiding question here is, how did physical geography influence the Arab way of life? So we're thinking about how geography changed how people lived. So let's keep reading, and as we read, we'll make sure that we use our vocabulary strategies, and we'll also make sure we're gathering evidence to help us answer this question for our objective of how geography changed the way people of Arabia lived. And as we're reading, I want you to track with me with your textbook open. Okay, so here we go. Begin reading with me now. Beginning in AD 630s, people called Arabs created a new empire in Southwest Asia. The driving force behind the empire was the religion of Islam. Within a century, Islam spread throughout parts of Asia, North Africa, and Europe. The land of Arabia. The Arabian Peninsula, also called Arabia, is a homeland of the Arab people. It is also the center of Islam. Arabia is a huge wedge of land between the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. Very dry plains and deserts cover most of the land. I want to make, I think, a circle map about the different things I'm seeing about Arabian geography. So I'm going to say Arabian geography. Draw a lot of space here, and your circle map might be bigger or smaller than mine, and we've already seen something so far. So number 1, I know it's in Southwest Asia. I know that it has deserts. I know it is surrounded by seas. Let's keep reading and see if I can add anything else to it, okay? The desert heat can be intense. Summer temperatures can rise above 122 degrees. Oh my goodness, I definitely want to add that down. So I'm going to write very hot, 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Whoa. Then let's keep reading. It says, water is available only at scattered springs and water holes, such spots called an oasis. At an oasis, trees and other plants grow. Not all of Arabia Desert, however. There are mountains and valleys in the southwest region. Enough rain falls in these locations for juniper and olive trees to grow. So I could say that because it's very hot in its deserts, there's also little water. Where there is water, there is an oasis, which is where plants grow. In ancient times, the Arabian Peninsula was surrounded by many different civilizations. At various times, the Egyptian civilization was to the west, the Mesopotamian Persian civilizations were to the north and east, and farther north were the civilizations of Israelites, Greeks, and Romans. This is a lot of the civilizations you guys read about in 6th grade. I'm going to go ahead and put a connection here. This is making me think about the things we learned about last year in 6th grade. So it'd be similar to how they lived. Okay. Long distances and severe Arabian climate kept these civilizations from invading the peninsula. This isolation, however, was not absolute, as trade brought some outside ideas and practices to the Arab civilization. Life in the desert. Long ago, many Arabs were nomads who herded animals and lived in tents. Another connection. We learned about hunter-gatherers and nomads last year as well. These nomads are called Bedouin. The Bedouin raised camels, goats, sheep, and traveled from oasis to oasis. The Bedouin ate mainly fresh or dried dates and drank milk. On very special occasions, they ate goat or sheep meat. To survive the harsh desert climate, early Arabs formed tribes whose members were loyal to one another. The leader of each tribe was called a sheikh. Arab tribes raided other tribes to take camels and horses. Rival tribes battled one another over land and water. Okay, let's go ahead and turn to the next page. Right now, I have an idea about how it's starting to affect them because they had very harsh connections, which made them fight with one another over land and water. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to my notes as one thing I see. So let's see, I think I need some more space for my notes. So I'm going to draw an arrow so I know I'm going to the next page. I'm going to flip this page over and keep writing it back to save paper. And now I'm going to say about how Arabs lived. Okay, so one way that they lived is we see that they fought, really well, tribes fought over land and water. Let's see if we can figure out any other ways about how they lived to help us to figure out how geography affected them. By the AD 500s, many Arab tribes had settled around oases in fertile mountain valleys. Okay, so maybe they're going to live by where the plants grow. So live by oasis, right? They want to live where there's water. They want to live where plants grow. They set up villages, farmed or raised animals, and traded goods. Merchants carried goods by camel across the desert to different markets. For protection against Bedouin raids, some made journeys in caravans or groups of traveling merchants and animals. Okay, so some people are living by the oasis to farm, and others are trading across the desert, and they're using camels or caravans. This is kind of similar to me. It reminds me of when last year you guys studied about the Silk Road, and we heard about that again this year when we're thinking about how disease spread. In this case, disease isn't spreading as often, but we are seeing trade and ideas spread. As trade grew, Arab merchants built towns along the trade routes. The most important town was Mecca, also known as Mecca, so it's spelled two different ways. Mecca was located about 50 miles inland from the Red Sea. The town became a crossroads of trade. Large caravans from southwestern Arabia passed through Mecca on their way to Syria and Mesopotamia. Some caravans traveled as far away as China. So I definitely think that this is important to write down, that this trading led to cities began on trade routes, and one example we had was Mecca. I'm gonna write that more neatly for you guys. Right. There you go. Mecca was also an important religious site. In the center of the city was a Kaaba. This low block-like building was surrounded by statues of Arabian gods and goddesses. The people of Arabia worshipped many deities, but the most important was Allah. They believed that Allah was the creator. Arabs believed this large stone inside the Kaaba came from heaven. Many pilgrims, people who traveled to a holy place, visited the Kaaba. All right, so now we've taken notes about the geography, and we've taken notes about how Arabs lived. And we need to use these notes to achieve our objective, to figure out how the geography affected where they lived. So we're going to write our proving behavior. And it needs to be in complete sentences. And I want to think about how the geography affected where they lived. One of the big things about their geography was that they were deserts, right? And that meant there was very hot and little water. And it meant there were only some places like oasis where plants could grow. So I definitely want to make sure I write about that first, because that seems to be what most of the area was like. So I'm going to start by saying Arabia was mostly desert. It was very hot with little water. If this is the geography, we want to think about how that meant that Arabs had to live. So I want to pick at least 2 ways about how they lived because it was mostly desert with little water. I guess I could add one more thing here, that there were some places called oases where plants grew. So I think of 2 ways. What do they have to do when they're in the desert, and what do they have to do in oases? And I'm going to give you a sentence starter to begin to see if you can figure it out on your own. So let's see. In the desert, people made a living by. So in the desert, people made a living by. And you can go ahead and tell me how they made a living in the desert. So think about which of these evidence that you see in your circle map tells you how they made a living in the desert. You can go ahead and pause the video now to finish this sentence on your own. Okay, by now you should have written the sentence on your own, and let's see if you got something similar to what I had. There's a couple of options. You could have talked about how they fought over land of water, or you could have talked about how they traded across the desert, or even began cities. So there's a lot of options here. I'm going to talk specifically about the trade. So you might have a different answer than mine and still be correct. Remember, if you copy my answer, you can only get as high as a 2. So you want to make sure you're putting down an original idea or saying my same answer but in your own way. In the desert, we're living by trading using camels and caravans. If you also talked about trading using camels and caravans and you still want to get that 3, why don't you go ahead and add an extra detail, maybe about how that trading led them to make cities like Mecca, or talk about how some people did something different, like fighting over land and water. The other one I want to talk about is the people who lived in oases. So let's add another sentence starter. In the oases, people made a living by, and you can go ahead now and fill in that sentence starter. Pause the video now to give yourself enough time. Okay, by now you should have written your own sentence in your own words, and you compare it to mine to see if you think it's similar or if you need to add other things to make it your own style. So they had water, plants grew, they had farmed by farming to grow crops and raise animals. Okay, so I'm going to add a conclusion sentence to say now these are 2 ways that people used the geography of Arabia to make a living. Okay. Thank you for your work today. I hope you're proud of your work and have done your best to earn a 3 or 4.